Welcome to episode 7 of What's That Sound? My name's Stu Watts. Today, my guest is Spike Leo, who is a hip-hop, R&B and pop producer from Melbourne, Australia. Today, we talk about why musicality and sonics are so important in his productions, why the energy in a recording session is so important, as well as a really long discussion about marketing. So if you love marketing and want to find out more, make sure you listen to the whole episode. Let's get into it. This episode of What's That Sound? You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. What's going on, everyone? Today, my guest is Spike Leo. Spike, thanks for joining us.
What's up? What's up?
How are you today?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
I'm doing well. For anyone that doesn't know who you are, can you give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do at the moment?
Sure, man. I consider myself a music producer, songwriter. I do some mix engineering, and I've got into the last probably 6 to 12 months sound design, so sample making and stuff like that. Who am I? I'm just a normal bloke who loves his family. I like having a sense of humor and taking life easy breezy cover girl. Things can get too serious, and I like to keep things lighthearted. I love community and connection. Interacting with other human beings is one of my passions. And I just love music from a young age. I was a performer for like 10, 15 years. I used to tour around doing that in my 20s. And yeah, I've just always been lucky enough to have really supportive parents to do what I want to do and what I love. And, I'm just really grateful to be in this position. I don't take any of it for granted, and I don't take for granted that people come to see me to get their records made. And, it's been a grind and hustle, and I can't wait to share some of that with you today, man. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's basically who I am. I'm no ego, no bullshit. What you get is what you see, which is pretty cliche, but that's it. I just want to have fun in this life. I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. So I just make every day the best, do the best that I can do and be the best that I can be. All the cliches that you can think of, they're all the things I want to say right now.
No, that's beautiful.
That's me in a nutshell, man. That's a complicated question. Who are you?
Yeah, we don't need to get too deep on that one. But
I'm not sure how deep to go.
No, that's all good.
Keep it light and fluffy.
Tell us where it all started. Where did music come into play for you, man?
Well, I don't know. I just, from as young as I can remember, I used to take the pots and pans out of my mum's kitchen. I mean, how many people got that story? But, I'm one of them. And I would just bang on them, and I enjoyed it. And I had a really keen sense for rhythm when I was very young. And so in grade 2, the music, they used to have clapping competitions. And if you won the clapping competition in grade 2, you get a poster. And my teacher back in grade 2 was a dude called Sam Shorts. And he was this kind of, in my mind anyways, like this Back to the Future looking dude with crazy hair. He used to play the recorders out of both nostrils, and we just thought he was the best. And I think he just had so much fun with it. I just remember going to music class and having a ball, and all I could think about is, I just want to win a damn poster. And I was really good at rhythm, so I'd win a lot of the clapping competitions. And then the music teacher was mates with my old man, and he just said, Spike's got a real keen sense of rhythm. Maybe consider getting him into drums. And I remember at the time I was like really into drums, but I was also really loved the look of the saxophone because it was gold and sexy looking. I don't know what it was in grade 2 that appealed to me, but I was going to go between the two. And I got to hold a saxophone, and I got asked, like, what do you want to do? You want to do sax or drum? I was like, drums. So that kind of started me on my journey. And I did lessons with this incredible Melbourne drummer who does like all the musical circuits for the last 30, 40 years called Dean Cooper. And he just got me started into drums, man. So that's kind of where the journey began.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
then, I remember seeing Hanson when I was really young. It was like that pop trio who no one will talk of anymore. But I just remember.
Have you listened to their recent stuff? Just to cut you off there, the
I
stuff that
would
they've
love to.
released in the last like 3 or 4 years is actually unreal. Like they're so talented. It's like
they were talented then.
Bluesy pop rock. It's beautiful. The sound as well. The mixing,
All right.
unreal. Check it out.
After this
it's
session,
good to revisit.
I'm gonna check it out.
They got
so
some
yeah, I was
tunes.
just like, I just remember them being young and me being like, oh, I think I want to do that. Like, look how young and cool they are, and they're playing music, and so that was like Hanson was what a weird inspiration story. They were some early inspiration for me, just seeing young kids do music professionally, and yeah, I just did it because it was fun. I wasn't really thinking anything else at that time.
Yeah. And so in moving into like your teenage years where obviously music plays a big part in all of our lives, what was your go-tos listening wise?
Well, I was born in 84. So, I grew up in the 90s and I knew the 90s were cool in the 90s, but now in like 2023, the 90s are really cool because there was just so much amazing, thriving music. I was listening to Tupac and Biggie and even before that, I was listening to like Rage Against the Machine and Blur. I remember when I got introduced to Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yep.
And then just became a diehard fan. I was a huge Michael Jackson fan growing up.
Yes.
I mean, if I had the opportunity, he would have taken me to Neverland and who knows. So maybe it was, I would have done anything for Michael. I'm still a huge fan of MJ. So I grew up on that, but also at the same time, like Dad was playing, one of the first things I played on drums was Dire Straits' Money for Nothing.
Nice. Yep. That half-cocked wah.
Yeah, my first performance was terrifying because I remember I had like a little boombox next to the drums and I couldn't hear it, and I knew I was out of time, and I stopped halfway through the performance. So that was my first time on stage. It was not a great experience, but yeah, probably all those bands. It was a lot of rock, Silverchair, Freak.
Yeah.
I was like into heavy shit because that was kind of the pop culture of my time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm a hip hop head and I'm a diehard hip hop fan, but that came much later. I started with all the rock and roll, grunge music, and even I wasn't into heavy metal, but I did get into like a little bit of Korn. I was obsessed with Korn. I actually listened to Korn like a few months ago with a client. I'm like, this still hits.
Follow the
It's
Leader
crazy.
and Issues, both
man, crazy.
fantastic albums.
Yeah, all that stuff I grew up with, and I don't know how it drifted off, but I was wearing baggy pants in the 90s that would like fall off my bum, and I'm just glad that baggy pants aren't a tattoo because I think I've worn skinny jeans for 20 years now. So I would have been in trouble if I was stuck with that fashion choice. But yeah, my music started back then, man, and I mean, it's been through so many things. Dad brought me up with like Eric Clapton and all that shit.
How did the production and engineering and songwriting stuff? Where did that come into play?
Yeah, so this is kind of unusual, but when I was younger, my dad had a computer. That's not the unusual bit, but the unusual bit was that I started playing with Acid Pro.
Yep. I was on that.
And Fruity Loops when I was really little. And I remember I did this remix, and I was just playing. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did a remix of Jam by Michael Jackson and Usher, You Make Me Wanna.
Right.
And I remember like chopping those, basically sampling those songs. I had no idea at the time, chopping them up, sticking them together, transitioning from one into the other.
Yep.
And I had no idea what I was doing, so I never saved it. I think it's on a tape somewhere in the archives. I don't know. But I never really had it saved, and obviously the computer died and crashed, and that was the end of that. But
Yeah.
I did start very, very young in music production, and then I never thought about it again. And I was heavily into performing arts, into like acting and hip hop dancing. I got into singing lessons, and I just wanted to be a performer on stage my whole life. And so I actually did that around 17, 18 until 26, 27. And I was on stage around the world performing, and I was always involved in music, but it wasn't till I was 26 years old. I'd been performing for like 8, 9 years. It was incredible because that was my dream, just to like tour the world, not pay for flights and accommodation. But funny enough, it actually got really tiring. And I had some friends who were having a lot of success in songwriting in the music production world. And I just saw it and I was like, well, I reckon I could do that. So I had enough, called my parents while I was on tour. I'm like, look, am I crazy because I'm living the dream, but I'm not happy anymore? And my parents said, you know, like, you're not crazy. Like, make the decision. You're young. Do whatever you want. And so I came back home with a small savings, and I spoke to a good friend of mine called Gerard Sadu, who is one half of Strange Talk, pop duo who did really well over the years and still thriving. And he helped me buy my first setup at A-Wave with a dude down there called Kieran. I spent about $5K on like just a Focusrite Sapphire Pro 40. I borrowed someone's laptop, headphones, some little Focal 40s speakers, like really, really tiny. And I think I was reading The Secret at the time, so I like wrote a note to myself and stuck it on the fridge. In 6 months, I'm going to make it. I don't really know if I understood what that means.
Yeah.
So, you know, ignorance is bliss. And here I am 10 years later. But I just, at that stage, I wanted to be an artist, and I had no idea what I was doing. The first time I recorded my voice was just the most frightening moment of my life, because, you know, when you record yourself that first time, you're like, is that what I sound like?
Yeah.
Very disturbing. So yeah, that's where the journey started, and and here I am now.
And who are some of the kind of idols, producer and songwriting wise, that you've looked to over the years?
Yeah, I mean, from a very young age, the radio was dominated by Pharrell and Timbaland.
Yep.
You know, at one stage, I think it was like 55% of pop radio was just consumed by these two producers, and they were gods for me. And, you know, I had a little Honda Civic 98 hatchback back in the day, and I fitted it out with like double subs and speakers. I was always obsessed with sound and music.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, and an exhaust on the back, because I love the sound of the and all that stupid shit you do when you're younger that you don't bother about. But, you know, every time Timbaland and Pharrell released a track, wow, man, it did something to me that music doesn't. I don't find it today with much production, but the beats and the sounds, you know, the sonics that those guys use and their color palettes were just like from another planet. And that's why, you know, every producer hails to these guys, because they were so unique and different. Missy Elliott, Justin Timberlake, Nelly Furtado. I mean, every record that they touched, you know, I'd bump Signs or Beautiful or Miscommunication by Timbo, all the stuff, man. So I started heavily getting into hip hop scene. I was a hip hop dancer. That music just kind of moved me and did something to me. So they were like the main influences, but also every Michael Jackson track, Stevie Wonder, all the stuff like James Brown. Like my dad brought me up on 104.3 Gold FM, which is old school radio. Now what's disturbing is when we listen to Gold FM now, it's like music from the 90s. I'm like, this isn't an old track, man, but it's old. So, they were the influences. And then as time went on, you know, it's like Mark Ronson and all these other cats that are out there doing incredible stuff. But I really love the versatile producers like, you know, Rick Rubin, who do everything.
What I was going to say is, and obviously tying that in with listening to your music is there's a sense of musicality there. There's obviously with all of those artists that you just mentioned and producers, they showcase their musical abilities through, old school techniques, I think. Apart from maybe Timbaland, I feel like obviously he was groundbreaking. Pharrell was more, in my opinion, more musical and rooted in the 70s funk and soul and stuff like that. Obviously Timbaland had elements of that, but he was chopping and, cutting up beats and all and sampling and that sort of thing. But with all of those artists, and it shows through with your music as well, is there's that focus on musicality and groove and vibe.
Yeah, well, with my years of studying, it's like if you want to become great at what you do, look at your idols, but look at the people that they studied from. So I was like, where did Michael Jackson? Where did he learn his stuff from? Where did Kanye get his influences from? Who does Pharrell look up to? You hear Pharrell talk about Marvin Gaye and all these old school guys, and you're looking at Quincy Jones, and it's like they're the people that they've been influenced by, so they're the people that I also want to study and understand. And Timbaland's brain is amazing. There's nothing bad to say about this guy, and the way he works is different to Pharrell for sure. And Timbaland is not musically trained, where Pharrell is like a jazz piano. He's trained with music theory, but they're both unique and different. But Timbaland will make an incredible beat and the sonics and the way that it bounces, and then he'll get someone to put something melodic over it. Like if you listen to Genuine Pony and stuff like that, he made that beat, which and Timbaland's beats are almost melodic in a sense, the way that they're structured, the sounds he uses. But Pharrell, when you go back to like one of his hits, Fronting, man, I remember watching that on MTV, playing it millions of times, like listening to his falsetto tone. And at the end of the day, it's always like, this word sonics and the way I think of music is like a color palette with a blank canvas, and you choose different colors to get different flavors and mixing different colors to get different compositions. And so for me, Pharrell is like, he understands what he's doing. I think there's a lot of power in that. And there was a stage in my music production career where I was like, I feel like I'm cheating because I have a really good trained ear. I can hear things, but I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. And I love Prince, and I remember, Prince's theory and musical ability is out of this world, but it's like, if you really want to be a great music producer, you don't need to be Beethoven, or you don't necessarily need to be classically trained. It helps, but you need to have a basic understanding of music theory. You got to understand your scales. You got to understand chord structure. Those things will elevate you as a music producer. They're going to get you to another level that you could never get to. There's all these beat makers who don't understand key signatures, and sometimes you hear their tracks and the 808's wrong, and it's like you need to learn the basics if you're serious about this. And I figured I'm going to be doing this for the next 30, 40 years. This is it for me. And maybe that'll change, but that's how I feel now, that I needed to get a good grasp of music theory. And I did go to a music school, but I was never classically trained. I was a drummer, and drummers are not musicians. So that was quotation fingers there. So, I remember asking my friends who are classically trained, like, dude, how do you remember this shit? How do you do that? And they're like, oh, well, there's like an acronym for this. You can do it this way. And so I just started putting in the work. And when I was coming up as a music producer, I was just trying to hustle to earn money. So I was teaching lessons. I was teaching vocal lessons, guitar lessons, piano lessons, music production lessons, I was doing dance lessons, any lessons I could teach to earn $1 creatively rather than working in a factory, I would do it. And I wasn't an amazing pianist, but I could teach beginners, and I had to learn all my scales and chords. So, it was through teaching that I had to excel and learn to make $1, and it elevated my production.
I think, you're absolutely right. And what I tell artists that haven't, or people that want to be producers and things like that are just coming up, is when you don't have the understanding of the music theory, you're guessing. You are, at the end of the day, you're going, I feel like that's right and I feel like it feels good, but you don't actually know. And so there's only so far that you can keep guessing until you keep making mistakes. And so the music theory side of things is obviously, when you're first learning it, it's like there's lots of aha moments, there's lots of unpacking, there's lots of uncovering of things that you didn't know before, but then it's the practice. And like anything, with practice, you start to gain muscle memory, for lack of a better term. It's all in your brain. Your brain's a muscle, and the practice is where the uncovering becomes application and becomes second nature at the end of the day. So you don't have to think about it anymore, and it's no longer guessing. And so, I 100% agree with what you say. Now, when it comes to your sessions, I want to know, what percentage of it starts with you and how much of it starts with the artist?
Can you elaborate on that question a little bit?
Absolutely.
What do you mean, what percentage starts with me?
Well, so say you're getting into a session with a new artist, or even someone that you've worked with before. Does a lot of it start with stuff that you've already, worked on, or is it a collaborative thing, or is it something that the artist has brought to you?
I'm trying to think how to best answer that. It depends what the artist is coming for.
Okay.
I offer lots of different services. So, if an artist is coming in just to do vocal production, then essentially I'm here as a vocal engineer. Mm-hmm. I'm here to assist them to get the best vocal takes. Mm-hmm. So, they'll come in with an instrumental or a pre-bought beat, and then it's up to me to set up the session. At the end of the day, I'm in the service industry, and for me, reputation is everything, and giving the best service to clients is everything. That's what makes a business work. So firstly, I want to make sure clients are comfortable and that the energy of the studio feels good, that it looks good, that it's clean. I have a little mini bar fridge in the corner here with drinks and chocolates. If it's a night session, I have some bottles of rum. I have phone stands. I just want to make sure that the artist, because a lot of artists who come through, especially first time, they're nervous. They have anxieties. They're vulnerable. We want to get the best performance from them. So it's really important that they feel completely comfortable with you as a human being. So the energy between us has to be right. If the energy is not right, I won't work with that person, and vice versa. If it's not my style or genre, like I said, there's no ego here. I'm not trying to prove anything. I want to get the best results. So if it doesn't suit me, I'll be like, look, I don't think I'm the right producer for you. And more times than not, man, people send inquiries. They haven't listened to any of your work. They don't know who they'll hit up 10 studios because it's all about pricing. But beyond pricing, it's about, is that the best and the right person for what you're doing? It's great that someone can do every genre, but at the end of the day, what is that person most passionate about? What do they excel in? Do you like what you hear? Because that's the result that you will get. Is it worth paying another $200 because you're going to get higher quality, better results? So as a vocal, and I did I did a small course at Studio 301 with Simon, can't remember his last name, but he did a vocal course, and I just went there to study as a vocal engineer, and I learned many great things about efficiency, not letting the artist wait for you. It's all about serving that person and making them feel comfortable at the end of the day, and obviously getting a great quality result. So that would be one service. In terms of my songwriting, that's 12 hours one-on-one collaboration with another artist. So that's heavily involved with the other person. And again, I make sure we're the right fit, that we have a good energy, that I am vibing with the music and style that they want to produce, because I don't want to write something that I don't connect with.
Yeah.
And if and when that's the case, we get into the studio, we start writing. And what I say to artists is there's only one rule. And the one rule is, if an artist chooses to work with me, that I need him to be 100% honest. The only time I've ever had a problem is when an artist wasn't honest with me and they said to me, "You just look like you were having so much fun. I didn't want to interrupt." And I said, "Well, of course I'm having so much fun, because this is what I love to do. Like, why would you want to hire me if I wasn't?" But at the same time, there's no ego with me, like, this is the right way. As you know, there's 1,000 sounds that you can select. You're selecting certain colors, but within that color scheme of whatever the genre or style is, there's hundreds of different bass sounds I could select. So I always just tell artists, if you don't like something you hear, just tell me. We'll find something else. There's lots of synths, lots of VSTs. So whatever I do, I just like it to be open and honest. And that's kind of the way I work, man, with everything. Whether someone's hiring me as a vocal engineer, as a producer, or a mix engineer, it's clear communication, understanding what their expectations are. I always ask for references, because someone might be like, "I like this and I like that," but I really need to understand when they say that it's the color red, and can you show me what the color red is for you? Because there's lots of different tones of red. So it's always just like putting everything out, clear communication, and then we always get to the end with a happy result.
So that being said, what is like the ideal session? What's a great session look like to you?
I mean, I can't remember for a very long time having a bad session.
That's a cool answer.
Yeah, and I say that it's not meant to be arrogant in any way. It's just that I always make sure before I start working that the communication is clear and open, that they understand who I am as a person and a producer, to make sure we connect on a human level first. And then if I resonate with the music, and I feel that I can bring value to their expectations and what they want out of the song, then we work together. So it's a great session is just at that stage, the artist rocking up, being open and honest, and just having a good time. I love creating something from nothing. That for me is just super exciting. And, at the end of the 12 hours when the song's finished, 10 years in, I still sit there and I'm like, man, I don't even know how we got to this end result, because if you show me the end result, or I hear a song, there's so many intricacies to it. I'm always mesmerized by, like, wow, you went from nothing to this. That blows my mind. And even after I finish a production, I'm just like, wow, I never thought we would get to this. You just have no idea where it's going to go, but it's taking those gradual steps. And I do have a very clear formula to how I songwrite.
Right.
Knowing that I'm going to get to the end result is just always amazing once you get there.
Well, I think when you're in a flow state, things just happen, and there's techniques to the way that we go about things, and that's purely from experience. We know what works and what doesn't. But you're right. Sometimes actually how you actually got the sounds is like, I couldn't tell you, couldn't tell you how we got that guitar sound. Like, couldn't tell you how you did that. But, it's just because, you're right. You're having fun. You're enjoying yourself. The artist's enjoying yourself. You're not thinking too much. I think a lot of the time when thinking gets in the way, you can overanalyze things, and, you just get stuck in the weeds, and, it's not very productive.
Totally.
And so do you have those times where you're kind of like overanalyzing things and realize, like, how do you realize when you're stuck in the weeds?
Yeah, I mean, look, at this stage in the game, I really understand I know who I am. I understand myself. I creatively, I always have, with my songwriting sessions, they're put into 3-hour intervals. So a 12-hour will be broken into 4 sessions because I feel like, instead of doing like 10 or 12-hour session where the energy can fall off, all my 3-hour sessions are high intensity, full energy. Instead of kind of like starting and then through the day, getting tired. There's no, I don't allow the sessions to be tired. So I always come with full creative energy. But, let's talk about when I first started. There's a lot of experimentation. Experimentation is the key. And like you said, repetition, doing it over and over. I did heaps and heaps of online courses. You can learn from the greatest people in the world. So all the answers are out there, and then it comes down to, okay, I'm going to take that technique and experiment. What does this mean? It's such a huge and long process that it's all about the journey. So there's no stages now in my creative flow where I am going through the weeds. There are definitely moments where I'm like, okay, I'm lacking inspiration, but I can recognize that in myself and not fight against it. So for me, first and foremost, it's about physical and mental well-being. The music is not able to flow if I'm not in a great mental state or physical state. And of course, because I do it every day, there's days where I'm like, I don't feel like doing it, but because I'm doing so many different things in the studio, on that day it might be more admin work and kind of stuff under the hood rather than musical, or sample making this day or mixing that day. So I'm always changing it up. I try to block my time. So, I do sometimes sit in the studio for 10, 12 hours without trying to go pee and eat, which is terrible. I don't recommend that. But a healthy habit is like every 3-4 hours, go for a walk, get up, move about, change it up. So in my schedule, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go out and buy this piece of equipment today, or a lead for the studio, and get a coffee and some lunch. Gonna do some mixing today. I have a client, 3-hour session, songwriting or vocal, and then I'm gonna get up and make some content, or you know what I mean. So I just keep it fresh. But I'll be honest, in the initial stages, there's so many struggles, man. Struggles about not earning enough money. Struggles about maybe I'm gonna have to get a full-time job, and the grind to this point of going full-time. Bro, I did so many shit jobs to get to this position. Like people are going to walk in the studio and go, whoa. And I'm 10 years in, like 10 years ago, I stood in my friend's studio and I looked around. I'm like, damn, I want this. I want what he's got. I just felt it. I was like, this turns me on more than anything. His studio.
Hey, thanks so much for listening so far. There is plenty more to come, so don't go anywhere. I just wanted to let you know that this podcast is made completely independently by myself with no sponsors. So if you like what you hear and you would like to show your support, you can send a donation to the PayPal link, paypal.me/whatsthatsound. The link is also in the show notes. Thanks so much for your support, and let's get back to it.
Yeah, so I was saying, like the weeds at the beginning basically was like hustling and grinding to get to a point where I could make this full time. And I was having my first kid. I was stressed as hell. I never had a full-time job in my life. I've always been creative. And, I went and got my first full-time job, which lasted 6 months because I was so stressed. Like, I got to provide, and I got this job at a juvie prison in Melbourne. And I was still doing music production. I was teaching music production to the inmates. So I was recording rapping and, I was grinding there for 6 months. And then I found out they have this great part-time position where I could work Friday, Saturday. I got bonus pay for working on a weekend. You get bonus pay because it's dangerous. And, you get paid for Sunday as well, even though you're working 2 days a week. And I think I was earning like $200 less. So I was like, well, that's a no-brainer for me. I'm gonna take that job up, and I can make up the extra $200 at my studio a week. If I only need to earn $200 from Monday to Thursday in the studio and then work Friday, Saturday. So there are a lot of times through the last 10 years, I had like 3-4 months when I was doing promo back in the day, like I was doing team leader stuff for promo agencies, and I'd work 7 days a week for like 3 months because I wasn't sure if the money was going to come back in.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll just hustle. So during that full-time period, I was like working from 8 till 4 and then 4:30 till 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then I'd go home. I'd do that like 6 days a week.
Wow.
And I was just adamant about making it happen. I just didn't see any other way. I'm like, and there was a stage where I'm like, maybe I'm going to go into corporate, maybe I'm going to go into real estate. My friend, because at that stage, man, my friends were talking about houses. They were talking about the new car they bought, and I just didn't have anything to talk about because, they all had like 6-figure jobs, and I was scraping. I was like scraping by. And I've just always been lucky enough to like believe in myself and ride or die for what I love. And I was like, I love this.
Yep.
And so, I did 6 months full time. I went to like part time, and then I was working Monday to Thursday in the studio, Friday, Saturday, building up the business. And I did that for another year and a half until I was like emotionally couldn't take the jail anymore, because it can be a bit violent sometimes and you're kind of like always on edge.
Yeah.
And I never got injured or anything, thank God. But, it's you hear a lot of the stories about these kids coming through. Like, man, we're blessed. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're blessed.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
at the end of the day, like, there's no human who doesn't go through shit, but some people aren't born with a chance, and these kids, I went in there like, maybe I can help them, maybe I can change them, but they've gone through like 13, 14 years of trauma. You ain't changing anyone in a year or 6 months. And for me, it got to the point when I was working there, it was an incredible life experience because I was scared to do that job. And anytime I'm scared, I know it's the right way. But I learned that, you might not be able to change these kids, but we might be able to change some perspective about certain things. And I realized that I was there as a vessel to help these kids escape out of their minds from the years of trauma, and just the power of music to be 100% involved, a vessel for them to express themselves. It's like really therapeutic for them to be able to express themselves freely. So I'd hear a lot of their stories through them rapping, stuff that, other people would not hear. And it was intense. It was intense, like there is a stage that you become desensitized and you leave there and you like leave it at the door. But I'm a sensitive soul, like all of us creatives. And it really impacted me, especially when I had a son, because there's kids there. I'm like, these kids don't have a chance. I saw the families that come through and I was like, okay, I get it. This is where they come from. Like, what chance do they have? And in these jails, it's a real community where they become friends. They feel safe. They get fed. They have rooms to sleep in. They know everyone. So when they leave, a lot of them want to come back. That's where they're comfortable. So, that was a great learning experience for me. I've had a lot of things happen in my life that have served me in a way to give me a really good dose of perspective. So I have a lot of gratitude. I don't complain much. My wife might say otherwise, but it's, for me, it's like I have a lot of gratitude to be where I am. I don't take it for granted. I know there's a lot of other people out there, but there is a stage where you stop competing and you do pave your own lane. And it's not about is someone going to take this away from me? It's not like that. There's so many great producers out in Melbourne and Australia who I'm so fond of, and I always reach out to collab because I'm very, like I said, I love human connection and learning from others. But I just feel like Melbourne has a lot to offer and we should really come together more. This has always been something I believed in. I had this event called Squad Sundays, which through COVID I didn't run. But it's like, for me, I want to bring community together. We spend so many years as creatives being isolated in our rooms, learning our craft and being alone. We need to find moments as a community where we bring each other up and come together and make it easier, because it's meant to be fun. But, when money gets involved, we get serious and we lose some of like why we started in the first place. So, that's kind of like where my heart's at.
Well, you're speaking my language, and that's obviously part of the reason why I started this podcast is because I want to showcase the amazing talent that we have here in Melbourne and Australia, and, you know, share the stories of, you know, what people have to offer here. People, a lot of the times, the artists that I work with, they just don't know who's out there. They don't know who to approach or how to get there. And that kind of ties me into the next question. And it's about marketing. It's about how you put yourself out there, but also with your Squad Sundays and other things like that you do that are community based. How do you get the word out there?
Yeah, I love this topic, man. So if I gas bag on like I have been, just stop me. When I first started, I got obsessed with Garyvee. You may have heard of him or may have not if you're listening. And you may love him or you may hate him.
Yeah.
It's all irrelevant. This guy was like my marketing 101. I realized very quickly that if I want to have a chance in this industry, I need to be business savvy. And I need to think about branding and marketing. Most people in the industry, artists and music producers alike, even more so artists, are not thinking about branding or marketing. They're not thinking about pushing out content on the daily and about quantity and quality. And, you know, if you're putting out a song every 3-4 months, it's like telling, so many artists put out a song and they're waiting to blow up and be famous. It's like getting a needle and throwing it in a haystack and telling all your friends, okay, go find it because it's the nicest. It's a gold needle. It's worth $20,000. It's the best needle you've ever. If you throw 100 needles in a haystack, someone's probably going to find it. And there's many bands I didn't find out about until 7 years later. And I was like, wow, these guys are dope. So what's the problem there? And then the band breaks up. So the problem is marketing.
Yeah.
It's not that you guys are not good. It's not that you're not an awesome music producer. It's not that you're not an awesome artist. It's that you're not working hard enough to figure out how can I get it to the right ears? Who's my demographic? How do I get it out there? So when I started, you start small. I was at the time on Gumtree. It was free to advertise. I was in my house with my studio. I took a picture of another studio and put it up there, just advertising, because I didn't really have a picture of my studio yet. Which I'm not recommending doing, but that's what I did. I just Googled studio images and I wrote a little ad. I think I was about 2-3 years in. I started getting my confidence. I was like, I want to start trying to do some songwriting. I started formulating my songwriting plan of how I like to songwrite. And it started there. And then slowly, I started getting people coming through who are at my level. And we negotiated a cash payment price. And over 6 to 12 months, I started getting like a wad of cash in my jeans drawer, like under my jeans. I'm like, shit, I'm making cash here. So I started upgrading my studio because that's what we do. And getting better equipment. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I started putting some money into the Gumtree ads to make sure that I was the top ad. So Gumtree, Craigslist, probably over in the States or whatever. But it's like, it was a free site. And then I was like, okay, there's Facebook advertising. And I slowly started experimenting with that. And then I went ham on Facebook marketing. I went crazy, and I was getting lots of inquiries. As I started getting more money, I was pumping it into marketing. I was on Airtasker getting my logo designed, branding. I started building a website. That was quite a bit later in. And my website's like 3-4 years in the making. It's like you never stop developing your website. So it started from there, but I started getting obsessed with marketing and all that stuff. And I was getting a good dose of inquiries through Facebook at the time when it was affordable. It's not affordable anymore. But we can talk about TikTok and how affordable that is, because if you remind me, I'll tell you about TikTok advertising.
Well, this is
in
the
a
thing
second.
with the mentioning Garyvee. You know, he always says it's not about the platform. There's always going to be new platforms. It's how to utilize them, and that's exactly what you're talking about.
And people don't like changing. Hey, they like to. They get comfortable, and
Yep.
and you got to change and move with the times. So it's like Gumtree and Facebook was good for me then. Now I've had a shift in what I want to do. So now I'm going hard on TikTok. I'm doing like 3 to 5 posts a day. I'm going to go back to Instagram. I've just like, if you see behind me, I've got like, no one's going to see because it's a podcast, but basically I got like a small setup. I'm going to do a YouTube channel and lighting and camera, blah, 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 blah. But content is key. Content is king. You know, video, whatever you can do, you just got to put it out there.
This is going out as video.
Sure. No one's going to know who you are if you don't put yourself out there. And for a lot of people, that can be very intimidating. But everyone has something to offer. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. Even, you know, in the beginning stage, if you've been doing music production for 6 months, there's someone who's just started. So you have something to offer them. So at any stage in the game, you have something to teach and offer and wisdom from your personal life experience. It doesn't matter if someone's already said it, because you're going to say it different, and people are going to connect with your energy. They might not connect with his or hers. So it's all valid. You just got to get out there. But yeah, I went from Facebook marketing and you know, when times were tough and I didn't have any money, I'd go through thousands of inquiries. I'd sit there for 4 hours, sometimes 5 hours. I'd hit up every single inquiry with like 50% special on lessons or songwriting. And then the next day, maybe I get 10 replies out of thousands, you know, 5 hours of sitting there, because I was like, I have to make it work. 10 replies. Out of 10 replies, I might make 3 sales, and that 3 sales would maybe get me through the month. You know, like it was really ride or die, and I really hustled my ass off. And in the moments where you're feeling bad and things are not working, that is the moment that you need to break out of your shell and expand. And you need to find other ways that work, because that way is obviously not working anymore. So, you know, the next stage was, there was a period where I was working for this dance coach, and the advertisement was he would train you up as a ballroom teacher. So I was teaching Latin dancing. Okay, I was a hip hop dancer, but he's like, I will teach you ballroom dancing, Latin, and blah, blah, blah. And then I'll give you 10 students a week. I was like, sweet. At least it's still creative. I've never wanted to be a ballroom teacher, but it was great, because then I'd take my wife to Coco Cabana in Melbourne, and I'd be like, I know salsa. Let's go do salsa. So I did that with him for 6 months, and he was super business savvy. This guy's got a place in Toorak. He'd have meetings every week and talk business strategies. He had scripts for his teachers to learn to be able to talk and do sales. It was incredible. That's awesome. After 6 months, he wanted to sell the business, and you know, I was umming and ahhing. I didn't really want the business, but I was like, he's got an amazing business. But anyway, I stopped after 6 months because I quit my part-time job at the juvie prison. I went into the full-time music production after 2 years. I'm like, okay, now it's time. Many years later. And I called him up and I said, listen, I'd love to meet you, take you out for lunch or a drink. So I met him down the road, took him to a cafe. I just picked his brain. I wrote like a list of questions. How do you invest your money? What do you do with the money? How much were you earning when you started? Like really personal. I just like asked him everything. How did you do marketing? How did you do? So the next thing that he told me that changed the game for me, he's like, well, where do people search the most? I was like, I don't know, social media, the internet, Google. It's like Google. He's like, that is the top search engine. I was like, okay. And he's like, look, when we type ballroom dance center, who's the first one that comes up? I'm like, okay, it's you. He's like, here's another keyword. Here's another. Now, I knew nothing about that. Nothing. SEO, search engine optimization. I knew nothing. And then I did research and I saw there's 2 options. One option is Google AdWords, where you pay every time someone clicks on your ad. You know, when you type in Google and there's ads. And, you know, I used to just skip the ads because I was like, they look quite addy. And I'd go down to the actual ones underneath. But every time you click an ad, it costs them $1, maybe for that keyword, or a $2 or whatever. And the other option is organic SEO work. Now that takes a few years. But I was like, well, if I'm going to be here for, and I did research, Google AdWords versus SEO. And if I'm going to be here for a few years, then I'm going to see which one's going to pay off better. In the long run, the organic SEO was the better option. But it means for the next 1 to 2 years, I'm not going to get shit from that. And I went with that one. I found a company at the time that was affordable, because back in the day, SEO was $2,000 to $3,000 a month. Now, a small business can't afford that. But I found this company that was charging me at the time, not anymore, but $500 a month. I'm like, I can squeeze that out. I can manage that. And they taught me everything, man. They taught me how to optimize my website, how to design it, how to change different names and metadata and blah, 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 what SEO means, how I get there, backlinks, the whole thing. And I started before.
The important thing that I'm hearing is that every little thing matters. And, I say it in regards to production, I say it in regards to songwriting, but it's absolutely the case in your marketing, in your setting up your website. Absolutely every little detail matters to the nth degree. And it's like when you take shortcuts and when you skip out on doing something because you don't think it will improve, that's usually where the shortcomings happen. And it's like, what's the point in doing anything if you're going to half-ass it, and you'll get the terrible results. And search engine optimization is a great example of that. And you're saying, it's going to take you a lot longer. Most things in life that are worth doing are going to take you longer. And I think it's a really good point.
Yeah, you got to play the long game. Totally, man.
Yeah, especially as a creative, because we obviously, when it comes to money, we're like, we need money, but the long term is what matters. People aren't looking. You're not looking to do a one and done with most artists. You just want to build that relationship. You want to keep them coming back. You want to have that long-term relationship, because that's when things start to pay off. That's in the long term.
Yeah. So think about like, what is the dream? Where do you want to get to? And then the last thing is, like, there's lots of different revenue streams within the industry you're in. There's teaching, there's vocals, there's mixing. There's so many ways for you to earn money. So if essentially you decide, I just want to sell beats and make money from beats, great. But what else can you be doing in the meantime to earn $1 until that picks up? And that's the way you got to think. And you got to diversify in terms of your marketing. Try lots of different avenues and see what works, and put a little bit of money and then put more. And if it's getting you the return of investment, then go hard. Don't build the business first and the money will come. Don't go blow it all on equipment. Put a big percentage into marketing, because it's not going to grow if you don't water it.
Absolutely. Now, I want to get nerdy and segue into what you were just saying, not to spend money on, but let's talk gear. Let's talk gear to start off with.
As well.
Let's talk hardware to start off with. What are some of your pieces of hardware that you're loving at the moment?
Look, I had this rule in my studio that if I don't use it for 6 to 12 months, get rid of it and buy something you will use, instead of just hoarding. So I use everything in the studio. It's all like the best quality, because I just wanted to make sure that, if I have something in the studio, it's being used. It's not just sitting there to be pretty, because if you have a piece of equipment that's $500 or $1,000 and you ain't using it, well, guess what? You can buy something that's $500 to $1,000 that you're going to use all the time. So don't be a hoarder. And my favorite, they're all my favorite pieces. I do use all of them. What am I like? Favorite piece? I don't know. I have this 1970s box called a Roland Gibson Maestro, which was used in like the Childish Gambino track. It's used by Jimi Hendrix. You make crazy sounds on it. Check it out on YouTube.
Cool.
Before I bought any piece of equipment, I am quite obsessive compulsive by nature. So I would spend hours and hours either going into a store to play it, or if I couldn't, just spending hours and hours on YouTube researching it to make sure that I'm investing the money wisely. And a lot of the vintage equipment, I mean, it goes up in price. So it is an investment. Not that I'm ever going to sell this shit. And if my kids go into this world, then they will, they will take it. And if I die tomorrow and they don't want it, so there's a house deposit basically. But it's like I really cherish all the equipment. Another piece of gear, which was like, one that I didn't need but I've always wanted, was my Nagra tape machine. I got this stereo Nagra tape machine. I always wanted a real tape machine because, I've used plugins for so many years. But to have a real tape machine like the first time and be like, oh shit, I don't even know really how to use it because I've only clicked plugins. And having that is a luxury. That's the word I wanted to use for it. So I love that. I got the Le Chappelle 992EG stereo preamp. It's this boutique company, which I really, really adore. I got this 70s Hawk HR45 Spring reverb, which is just like really sexy. Anything from the 70s. You can see the tape machine hold up over there. And there's the Echo over here.
We can see it in use on your TikToks as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all the gear's lovely. There's nothing that I don't like in here.
No, that's beautiful. You're more of a hardware man than a software man by the sounds of things.
I just love, I always went through the debate of like hardware versus software. What you don't need it. I went overseas and I had a laptop. I had my push MIDI. I was on Machina for like 8 years. I've just moved to Ableton and Push. I had my push MIDI. I had an interface. That's it. I was in someone else's studio. But gear is a luxury and it feels great. I'm like a hands-on type of guy. I always excelled at anything that was practical in education. So I love being hands-on with instruments and gear because it's nice. That's it. You don't need it though.
I love it. And let's talk software. What are some of your go-tos in the plugin world, or even just using Ableton? Why are you using Ableton? Let's start there.
I started on, I went from Acid Pro to Logic. I started on Logic for many, 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 many years. I know Logic like the back of my hand. And I was also got into Machina by Native Instruments. And I was making beats there because the workflow was fantastic. And at that stage, Logic didn't have any samplers or anything like that. Logic does now.
Yeah.
And so I used to bounce stuff out of Machina and then put it into Logic. It took me a little bit more time to like create the whole composition in Machina, then move to Logic and arrange and mix there. But then I was about to leave Logic for Luna, Luna's UAD, which isn't advanced to the stage I needed it to be, but I just needed something fresh and Logic was feeling old. And then Apple did the update where they got the sampler and the drum machine. So I stopped using Machina and I was stuck in Logic. And then I got this job for this video game company that I do on the weekly, and all their templates and everything was in Ableton, and it was getting a little bit tricky to run it through from Logic. So I was like, when you're so many years in, you don't have as much time with your schedule, and I really didn't want to learn something from scratch. And all the attempts over the years of getting into Ableton, because you need to know all the hotkeys to really move around fluidly, was incredibly frustrating. So I took the plunge. It took me like a month to get my bearings like properly. And now I'm really deep diving into it and I'm loving it. So I'm still jumping between sessions in Logic because I have a lot of sessions and stuff there, and Ableton. But the workflow between the Push 2, which was designed for Ableton, is next to none. There's nothing else like that, and I was using Machina in Logic, which kind of integrates, but, Ableton's made for Push and vice versa, and they integrate perfectly. There's no other DAW really that's that advanced. And Machina just, the arrangement was clunky. It wasn't great for kind of arranging and mixing. So Ableton is pretty good right now.
Yeah, nice.
In terms of like VSTs, I'm really enjoying Analog Labs, Arturia stuff, Analog
Yep.
Labs, 5. Pigments is just this incredible synthesizer with incredible sound capabilities where you can drop samples in and digital sounds.
Beautiful.
And the idea of like dropping in something digital with something analog, with something real, you get crazy textures. There's a great free plugin called Dirty Filter by Bedroom Producers, I think,
Cool.
which you need to download right now. It is incredible. It's got its
It's on
own
my to-do list
sound.
for today.
Yeah, it's basically filtering, but you just get these crazy crunchy tones. You play with it, you'll love it.
Unreal.
UAD stuff is next to none for me. Soothed by Oak Sound for sibilance, incredible. There's a few different plugins, kind of tape machine plugins, which I love. Oh, the God Particle, Jason Joshua, that's lit. If you go Baby Audio Tape, spelt TAIP, dope.
Yep.
I mean, the list for me goes on and on and on. RC20, I mean, everyone's using it now, but there's a lot of plugins like that kind of you can get different sonics and sounds that are quite exciting. There's Sound Toys, all that stuff is lit.
Great tape emulation / degrader that I saw Stuart Labranda SB90 shout out the other day is Cymatics Origin.
He's my homie. Yeah.
Unreal.
Which one's it called?
Cymatics Origin. Great plugin.
Right.
Sonically
I don't know that.
for like degrading the audio. Really cool. Really cool stuff.
Okay. I believe.
And it was free at the
check
time that I downloaded it, but I don't know if it
damn.
still is.
One of my favorite plugins is by a company called Pulsar. It's called Echo Rec, and it's basically it's a Echo, but it's from the 70s that Pink Floyd uses. It's like I think it's
like the Roland.
I think it's based off like a Benson T7E or whatever they're called. It's like old school. They're about like 10 to 15K, not affordable.
Cool. Yeah,
but it's super beautiful and it sounds really analog-y and unpredictable and vintagey. It's beautiful sound.
Love it, man. Well, I mean, this has been amazing. Thank you for all that you've shared so far. I always like to finish off by, first of all, just asking if you have any final pieces of advice for, first of all, producers, engineers. You've already shared so much, but any like final ones for, first of all, producers, engineers, and then artists.
Definitely. I mean, this applies for both. You know, I can't remember where I read this, but we all start in the same spot. So, you know, the first spot is survival, just trying to get by, trying to make $1. And that's where we all start, and that's okay to be there. You know, you don't need to stress about that. We all start there. No one gets into a position where everything's hunky-dory unless you get a hand-me-down, but that's unlikely for most. The next one for me is security. You know, you're trying to get security and make sure that you can build some money behind you, build a full-time position in what you do. The next one is success. You know, how do we quantify success? What does success mean to you? I've had many successes in my life. Is there a point you're like, okay, I'm successful, I'll stop? No, there isn't. It always keeps going. So make sure you quantify what is success, because once you reach that idea of success, life goes on. It's not just about finding success, and that might be fame and fortune for you, or it might just be being self-sufficient through music or artistry, whatever it is. And after success, once you kind of like feel successful, whatever that means to you, comes significance. And that's like, what am I actually doing to make an impact? How am I helping people? How am I making a difference? You know, I have many times now where I'm thinking, what am I doing with my life? I love it, but how am I actually helping people? And my idea around that is like, if I can elevate myself beyond the moon, then the people who deserve it and who are working hard, I can take them with me, you know, and I really love helping people, making other people money, helping other people succeed. That's very important for me, and that's the way that I can give back and help by either mentoring or just, getting cash in other people's pockets as well. So that's kind of like my final thoughts. As a music producer and as an artist, it's the same. If you want to succeed, there's three things you need. One is talent, okay? And if you don't have talent, you can still get it. You need hard work and perseverance, and you need marketing, branding, and money behind you to push those things out there. You got to get to people's ears. If you want to be a service or a business, people got to hear about you. How are you going to do that? And like you said, man, there's many different avenues. Word of mouth takes time. There's SEO, there's marketing on TikTok. Super cheap right now. I paid $100 and got 20K views. That's ridiculous. You guys got to really go hard on that right now before it becomes unaffordable. But yeah, if you have those three, and I can tell you right now that most artists and producers don't have the three. They might have two or one, like talent and branding, but not the perseverance and consistency. Or they might have the money and the perseverance, but not the talent. You've seen many of people like that blown up. And you really want to work on all those three. Repetition is key. On the days you feel like shit, just get in there and do something that maybe isn't writing lyrics or, admin. Just keep pushing forward and taking step by step. That's my last thoughts.
Love it. Well, thanks again so much, Spike. Really, really appreciate it. It's been super valuable, all the stuff that you've shared.
Thanks for having me,
you. Oh, you're welcome. Where can people find you online?
Well, I mean, I'm everywhere that you can find people online. So all the social platforms, just type Spike Leo or Spike Leo Music. I'm on IG, TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff. And, sometimes I'm a bit more aggressive with it. Other times I've taken like a 2-3 year hiatus just to like make music. But you're going to be seeing my face pop up a little bit more now.
Nice one, man. Well, thanks again. Thanks to everyone that's listening or watching. Thank you for taking the time. As always, share, follow, subscribe, all of the fun stuff that you always hear on these social networks, but it really does make a difference. We want to get this out to as many people as possible, and that just helps. Every little bit helps. So thank you once again, and we'll see you next time on What's That Sound podcast.
Dope, bro. Thank you. God bless.
Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.